I do think go to the district first. Once your school has an elective, go to the district and say, hey, every school in our district should be required to offer at least an elective in personal finance, at least. And then we can get to the point where the district requires every student to take it, right? And then you can become a lighthouse district or a model district where you can show how you've solved for all of these, variables that then the state could use your district as a model for new districts to do the same.
Welcome to the Teacher Money Show, the podcast dedicated to helping teachers navigate your unique financial challenges and unlock your financial superpowers. I'm your host, Sean Morgan, a full-time teacher. That's right, I teach every day just like you, and personal financial coach. And I'm here to help every teacher, whether you're a seasoned teacher looking for fresh insights or a new educator navigating your first paycheck, to have a richer wallet, classroom, and life.
The contents of this podcast are informational in nature and are not legal or tax advice, and neither I nor my guests are engaged in the provision of legal, tax, or any other advice. You should not act upon this information without first seeking appropriate advice from an accountant, financial planner, lawyer, or other professional.
I'm super excited to have Yanely Espinal on the show today. Yanely is one of the funnest personalities you'll meet in personal finance. While working as an elementary school teacher, Yanely decided to change her financial life by paying off $20,000 in debt in just 18 months. And in 2015, she created Miss Be Helpful, a YouTube channel that now has over 4.5 million views to help others learn the money skills she never learned in school. She is the Director of Educational Outreach for Next Gen Personal Finance, which is a nonprofit offering 21st century relevant financial educational curriculum and teacher professional development workshops at no cost. So definitely check those out. And the author of Mind Your Money, insightful stories and strategies to help you reach your #money goals. So lots of wealth of information here with Yanely. Yanely, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Sean. I just love talking to teachers. My heart is always like, I feel like once a teacher, always a teacher.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of being a teacher, what was your journey in education? How did you get that interest in personal finance? We kind of covered it in your bio, but let's hear a little bit more.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, I didn't know that I wanted to be a teacher until my senior year of college. All throughout undergrad, pretty much, I was on the art history, museum education track. I was a very artsy kid and a nerdy kid. So I spent my college years studying, history and art. And I was going to do museum programming because I really love working with families and communities and schools. But I thought like bringing them into a museum space, I had interned at museums all throughout high school. And I just thought like, there's so much programming, there's so much fun stuff that happens that, most people just don't take advantage of it. At least not people in the communities that I grew up in. Museums are seen as stuffy and, rich people do that. And you just go, as you stare at like confusing pieces of art on the wall and, and it's not really inviting. So I wanted to make museum spaces more inviting, but then my senior year of college, I took a class called The History of African-American Education in the United States. And it just really opened my eyes to, the complete inequity in terms of like resources, in terms of academic interventions, in terms of what's available where and to who, and especially as it relates to the history of, Black Americans in this country not being given the same opportunities and access in terms of education, and how that kind of looks now. Where we look at schools in certain zip codes and they don't have the same facilities, the same access to technology, the same level of quality of educators. And so I quickly just like zoned in. I started learning about the achievement gap and, and all of these different issues in education. And so then I was like, well, how can I help with this massive problem? Like, I feel like I got lucky because I went to schools that were quote unquote bad schools, like that got bad grades, bad ratings. But I had the most incredible teachers that lit fire in me to want to learn, to want to read, and to want to excel. So I just felt like maybe I could be that teacher for another kid. Maybe I could help the next like little Yanely sitting in a seat in a classroom somewhere that doesn't feel like, school is for them, but having a teacher light up that passion in them. And so that semester, I decided, you know what, I'm going to apply to Teach for America, because I wasn't on track to have an education degree or anything like that. So I wasn't like on the traditional teacher track, but Teach for America allows you to join their core program and then, do a very quick training over the summer. And then you become a teacher pretty much right away. So I started teaching 3rd and 4th grade right out of college. And it was definitely life-changing work. Like, I mean, I just became so invested in my students, their families, my classroom, building a warm culture that was inviting, and really helping them to feel as comfortable in the classroom as I felt as a kid. And then that's when I realized no matter how hard I work at helping them learn their math, their reading, their writing, their science, their social studies, they could still end up like me, meaning I had, multiple degrees, and I still had $20,000 of credit card debt because the one class I never took in school was how to manage money, how to understand the US financial system, and how to use it to help you and your family progress. So that was the realization that I had, was there's a big missing piece here in the curriculum. And until I, help make room for that, I'm going to feel like there's this void and I'm not really doing, my life's work until I figure that piece out.
I love how much of a heart you have for education, and especially for those kids that just really need it, right? There's a number of kids that, like, if they didn't go to school at all, they would be fine, right? They would just educate themselves, right?
Yeah.
But the majority of kids really need extra support. And then, there's those underserved communities that just absolutely need extra. But the beautiful thing is that the number one thing that helps those kids is not having a nicer facility or having more technology. It's having amazing teachers. And having an amazing teacher can make all of the difference, like it did for you. And I really believe that if we can help every teacher become financially intelligent, financially literate, then instead of having their teachers say, well, I'm a poor teacher, right? They can hear their teacher say something like, I'm a teacher and I'm going to be a millionaire, and you can too, little Johnny, or whatever their name is. And that's going to, just raise so many kids up. That's what my vision is, my hope for the world. And I love how you felt that same, desire to, like, just get the kids learning about their finances, because that's really what the goal is to help all these kids, the ones that are just, in poverty, that really need support and help, to raise up by understanding finance.
Yeah, 100%. I think so much of it is psychological too. Like if you grow up in an environment where everyone around you is telling you that, you're lucky that you even got this far. You're lucky to be given this hand. You're lucky at this and that, rather than, a growth mindset. Like it's not about luck. It's like, the more at bats, the more practice, the more hours you get at doing the skill or the craft that you love. Like it's just a matter of time in terms of you unlocking this like masterful craft. And for me, like I just never really was taught that. I was never told that. And so I had a very fixed mindset. And I think a lot of kids end up having a fixed mindset from an early age, because a lot of the adults around them are just saying, just do this, just do what you're told, sit still, follow directions. And they're not really taught necessarily the power of the mind, of the brain. So, that's something that I really do think has helped at least me, like unlock the next level of my life. And also that I think a lot of teachers could benefit from exposing students to those ideas around like how malleable your brain is and how you can change your thoughts, your beliefs, your ideas for the better.
Yeah, I love it. I was just talking to a guy named Matt Kimball just a few episodes ago, and he was talking about the importance of having your brain change, so that way you aren't just stuck in this mindset of, this is where I'm at, right?
Yeah,
Having that
totally.
abundance mindset, and realizing that like with kids, you don't want to be the end all of the approval for them, right? It's like, okay, they come to you and say, is this right?
Right.
What do you think? Is it right?
Exactly.
Did you put in the effort to, like, having the kids take that agency? And that's a huge part of, like, we can teach them finances, but we also have to have that, that behavior piece that goes with it, I think, which
Yeah,
is absolutely essential.
definitely. 100% agree.
So today we want to talk about teaching kids finances, actually talking about personal finance literacy and how we can advocate for that in our schools. So you do this already. You are working on getting personal finance curriculums into schools. How did you get involved in that?
Yeah. Well, I think the important part of this work is to require that the standards for financial literacy are taught. The curriculum doesn't necessarily matter so much. Obviously, I think that that's where we get like, into the weeds. There's so many incredible curriculum being developed out there. There's like so many options. There's some incredible ones that are free. There's some that are minimal, just like a couple lessons. There's some that are really like robust, like the full entire course from start to finish for 18 weeks or even 36 weeks of instruction, which is amazing, right? It runs the gamut in terms of what curriculum you use. The reason why I love and I obviously I work at Next Gen Personal Finance is because, and for short we go by NGPF, is because NGPF's curriculum is not only is it free, which is incredible for teachers who are already in a lot of times in environments where we're being taught, oh, budgetary constraints, we can't afford to send you to that training, we can't afford to get that curriculum. It's free. So there's absolutely no excuse for a school district to say, oh, we can't do it, in terms of the reason being the cost. But the second reason, which I think is more important, is how high quality the materials are. Like when you look through the lesson plans, you will see the most robust unit plans, lesson guides, student worksheets, videos, interactive resources, games, articles. When I tell you, I mean, it's not like the kind of stuff where it's like, fill out this worksheet every single day. Now, people go on the website and they might see just a lot of worksheets, but when you actually jump into the lessons, like, man, they really bring this money stuff to life. You have games where the students are up and moving out of their seats around the classroom, debating, really critically thinking about, these issues, and all related to money. And so I do think that the important piece of teaching this course is it has to be at a level of rigor that, like, people can't say, oh, this is just like an easy, like, low level, like low rigor course. Absolutely not. Like, when I tell you this course could be a college, this could be like an AP level course in terms of how much critical thinking, how much analysis, how much evaluation, how much debate. You have to defend arguments. You have to criticize and take apart arguments. You have to defend institutions, criticize institutions. You have to think about the systemic, the financial elements in terms of the systemic way that structures are set up for accessing financial resources in this country, products and services that you can criticize and evaluate. I mean, when I tell you it's really rigorous, and I think that the key to getting it in every single school is to acknowledge that it really is how you want it to be done. Some schools will teach it as a math class. Okay, we're going to teach this as a financial algebra course. It's going to be in the math department. And that's interesting, like, to look at it as like the end goal of math. Like when we think about what was the origin, like the genesis of math, numbers, like why were they ever even invented, right? It's to keep track, to count how much of something, right? So if you're bartering with someone, how many of these cows is equivalent to those goats? How many of these shells is equivalent to those apples? Like, how do we barter if we don't have a sense of quantity of numbers, of being able to put like an amount of value system together? And money is literally just that. It's just a value and accounting system. And so it's interesting. Some departments or some math departments will say it makes sense to put it at the end of the road. Like, oh, you learn all this math, and the end goal is for you to be able to master ultimately what math is for, which is the accounting system that we live by, which is money. But then you have other people say, no, there's some folks who have like a fixed mindset around math, especially a lot of kids, where they'll be like, oh, I'm not a math person. Oh, I hate math. Math is not for me. And for whatever reason, they've had bad experiences around math. So if you put it in the math department and call it a math class, now all of a sudden, all those people, oh, I'm not a math person, are now I'm not a money person, because math and money are being equated. So that's a little dangerous there. You don't want to necessarily turn off all the people who aren't like ignited by math. So the other option is to make it its own track. Personal financial literacy is its own track. It does have its own standards at the national level, and most states, not all, but a lot of states have their own state standards for financial literacy instruction. So there's sort of a path for that. And that's kind of what I think makes the most sense, because it is a multidisciplinary course. There's some math, of course, you have to do interest rate calculations and things like that, but it's not necessarily super math heavy. It's a lot of critical thinking. It's a lot of compare and contrasting. It's a lot of like reading and understanding, and more so grappling with ideas, and then kind of thinking about how it aligns or doesn't align to your personal value system, and how you would then manage your own money, and the values that you have around money. So I do think every single student in the world, but specifically my work in the US, needs and deserves access to a full course around personal finance, not just sprinkling in like a few weeks of money lessons in an existing class, because it's not gonna get the job done. There's so many standards across so many topics. You can't do that in 2 or 3 weeks. You really need a full semester to even just scratch the surface across so many issues like banking, budgeting, taxes, insurance, investing, credit, paying for college, buying your first car. There's just too much to try to teach it all in like a 3-week truncated. Like, it just doesn't work, so it needs its own course.
A huge thing to consider is that you don't feel like if you're being asked to teach this, don't feel like you have to start from scratch, right? And there's so many resources out there that we couldn't list all of them. But NGPF is, of course, a fantastic place to begin. And what I love about you're saying is like, these are free. So like if you get to one of these lessons and you don't like it, you don't have to use it, right? It's not like they're like putting a straitjacket around you to say like, you have to do these lessons in this order. This is just a resource, right? So you can just, get what you can from NGPF. And then if you like something else, you can, use something else. But the point is, the whole idea is that we're trying to teach these kids about thinking through their money. It's not really about the math. The math that you use in your personal finance every day is like fourth grade math. Yes, it's just higher.
Addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. It's just the basic for operations. It doesn't really get much more complicated than that.
Yeah, like the higher, if you want to do like, compound interest, obviously is going to take a bit higher, but like I can't just like do the compound interest calculation just off the top of my head. I just put it into a calculator because that's what the tools are there for. And it'd be a massive waste of my time to write that out by hand to figure out how much compound interest I'd be paying or receiving over the course of a loan or an investment, right?
Yep.
That's not what the personal finance is about. It's not about your ability to do the math. In fact, I would say that only like 10% of understanding personal finance is your ability to understand the math. Yeah. Then you have to have, just the behavior pieces of it. And then there's also like the vocabulary and understanding what those mean in practical terms. Those things are what really matter. And that's why it needs to be its own course, because it's not really a social studies, and they often lump it in there, and it's not really a math class. It's its own thing. So
it really is. Yeah, it really is. And it's so interesting because like I do think there's been a national wave. Like in 2018, I started working full-time at NGPF. And I had left the classroom just a couple of years prior to that. I was working at a literacy intervention program in New York City, which I enjoyed that. But I was like, you know what? I really want to pivot over to financial literacy. So I started doing my own content, and then I found out about NGPF. And in 2018, we started, I started at least traveling the country, offering teacher trainings, helping develop more curriculum materials. And then we realized, you can give all the resources, you can give all the curriculum, you can give the free training, everything there, high quality, free, it's there. But only the people who want to do the right thing are going to do it. So which means you're only going to find the class being taught in school districts where either there's a leader at the district level who's very passionate about financial literacy being taught, or at the individual school level, there's a teacher who is extremely passionate about teaching that course themselves. And they will literally take on an extra, they'll give up a prep, they'll, whatever they have to do, because they recognize that this class is so important and they love the material so much. They know it's life-changing and they want to go above and beyond to make sure it's on the course, it's in the course catalog. But the problem with that is every single student needs the class. So if we just keep leaving it to the honor code, do the right thing, teach the class because you should, because kids need it, there's going to be tons of students that never get access to the class because it's an elective, or it may or may not be taught, or once that teacher retires who is passionate about it, it's gone. And so we realized like it really has to be a requirement, because if it's not required, then it will only get done when people really feel passionate about doing the right thing for the right reason. So what we realize is it's like, imagine making algebra or biology not a required course, just like an option. Like if your district or school wants to teach it, then they can teach algebra or biology, but they don't have to. Do you know how many schools would not offer biology or algebra to every kid? So we realize it's so important. It's a core class. It's critical. It's core to life. And yet it's not core in school. So we decided, okay, we have to really advocate more. We can't just be offering curriculum and resources. There has to be a piece of the work that's saying we need to advocate for every kid to get it. So there's an affiliated organization that was developed in 2021, which is called the NGPF Mission 2030 Fund. And at this organization is also a nonprofit. I work as an advocate, and starting in 2021, I was able to actually work at the state level with lawmakers. So all of the education committee members at the Senate, state Senate, and also at the state House of Representatives. So now you're able to actually engage with locally elected officials and explain to them why it is so important that they talk to the Department of Education or the Board of Education and figure out a way, whether it's through regulation or legislation, to get every single school in their state to require a financial literacy class at the high school level. And now that kind of becomes like the world of politics, right? Like I entered the arena of politics in 2021 without having a clue what I was getting myself into. I knew nothing about local politics. I thought I knew, enough or whatever, but I did not know anything. And so I went in, and in 2021, there were about maybe 8 states that had a full semester graduation requirement of a financial literacy class, required for high school graduation. And now we're having this conversation in early 2025. There are currently 26 states. And I want to say our organization, NGPF Mission 2030 Fund, can take credit for all except maybe one of those states that we've increased from 8 to 26. So it really is like literally going door by door, going state by state and saying, hey, like, do you know that your state is falling behind? Do you know that your students are falling behind? You're not modernizing the curriculum. You're not teaching financial literacy in the 21st century. And kids are dealing with buy now, pay later, cryptocurrency, all kinds of scams and schemes online. They're getting ads on social media every day. Like the world of money looks so different today than it did even just 10 years ago, that if we don't help your students keep up, they're going to fall behind. You really want that for your constituents and for your state, for yourself, for your own kids, right? Like a lot of these lawmakers have kids in school. And so by lighting a fire under them and getting them to realize this is a call to action, that we do need to stop looking back and saying, oh, but we haven't required it before. We just need to look forward and say it needs to be required moving forward. And we've been able to do that in 17, 18 states, which is amazing. We got some big hitters, like we got Florida, we got California, we got Michigan. So, and we're really seeing a lot of progress in terms of how you're seeing both sides of the aisle. Like you're seeing some blue states, some red states, like you see a lot of Republican leadership supporting this, a lot of Democratic leadership supporting this, which I love because I've met with people on every side of the political spectrum all along it. And I will tell you, every single person that I've met with who's passionate about this issue agrees that every kid needs and deserves it, and every family needs and deserves this class. Even they might disagree on other political issues, but on this one, they agree. And that's why I love this issue, because it's so not political. It's just common sense. It's bipartisan for the most part, but everybody pretty much agrees, like, what's up? Why aren't we doing this? Like every single student needs this. It's core to life, and it should be core in the curriculum.
So realizing that it needs to be required, what can a teacher in a classroom do to help bring this about? Is there any way that we can participate in advocacy ourselves?
Absolutely. I love this question. So first of all, check your state, because a lot of people don't realize that the state level, like there may be a new requirement that is it's going to be implemented within the coming few years. When these laws are passed, it's not like starting September 1st, you have to start teaching it. Like we absolutely hate legislation that puts a super quick turnaround time, because teachers need time, districts need time, we all need time to prep, to plan, to rework the schedule, to start vetting curriculum. There's a lot of work that goes into administering a new requirement. So there's usually a 2 or 3 year runway. So just check to make sure maybe your state is one of the newer ones and there's a 2 or 3 year runway on it. If you're in a state that does not require it at all yet, then what you can do is actually start in your classroom, which I think is probably the most powerful thing you can do, because those students and families are the customer of your school, right? If those students and their families are unhappy with what your school is offering them, the product and the service that they're getting at the school service, they can go to another school, right? That is the most powerful way that they can use their agency, is to go to the school principal and say, hey, we noticed just a couple blocks down, there's a high school that offers financial literacy, real world money skills, and our school doesn't offer that. What? We're not competing, we're not keeping up. Their schools preparing kids for the real world, and we're not. So start there with just exposure to the students about, hey, there's kids that are getting this. There's students in schools similar to ours that have this class, learning about banking, budgeting, investing, paying for college, all this stuff that money that really matters. So get them fired up about the fact that, hey, that's not right. If other students get it, we should get it too. Everyone needs to get this. And also that they want to learn about this. And then the second thing is actually start a petition. Create a petition, have every student sign it, have every teacher sign it, pass it around the school building, and make it an issue and a cause that, like, you are really garnering a lot of like momentum in the school to say to the principal, we need this class. It might start as just an elective, because you got to start somewhere. It's going to be kind of impossible for you to just go straight to the principal's office and say, we need to require this. And they go, okay, let's do it. Next year, it's going to be required. Like it's a long journey. I know teachers who have spent 10, 15 years fighting to finally see a personal finance requirement at their school or district. So, come in with realistic expectations that It's a win if you can even just get the course added as an elective option for students to opt into. And then in a few years, it can become a requirement once you have a few years of showing how impactful the course is. You got some student, testimonials. You have some results driven data you can show. Look how much students improve in this area. Look how much it affects other aspects of their lives. And also the popularity of the class is huge. If you start an elective in personal finance and it's like the wait list is super long because everybody wants to take the class, that in and of itself is a testament to the principle. Wow, that course is so popular. It needs to be offered to every student. So you want to work with the students that do take your course, get them pumped up, get them to run out and tell all the younger students, you have to take this class. Like, this class was amazing. Like, you get to learn how to become a millionaire, multimillionaire by learning about investing and banking and doing the right things when it comes to your interest rate and, buying things the smart way. Like, this is a class you need. And if every single student who's coming up, who's about to be, at the level where they can opt into that class is aware, then it becomes the most popular class in the school. And that is like how you light that match, how you start that fire. So I would definitely say start with your students, start with their families, then move out to a larger community, get the interest like documented. So petition is really great. And then go to your principal and have that conversation and let them know this isn't just coming from you. This is coming from the students and their families. Like, look at all these signatures. This is something the community at our school is demanding and they deserve it. So let's make it happen, right? And I think that's kind of the start to where a teacher can be really powerful in garnering like that motivation and getting the students to recognize they have a lot of agency in this.
Yeah, awesome. And then what would you do to take that from your school towards, say, the state level?
Yeah, well, first go to the districts. I think it's very important for states when we go talk to the state reps or to lawmakers at the state level. It's very important for them to see that we're not going from 0 to 100. Like, there's some level of it happening already in their state as it is. They just aren't really aware because it's not widespread. So what we'll do is we'll find like what we call lighthouse districts, which are, model districts. So we'll say, take a look at this district. For example, in the state of Colorado, Denver Public Schools has already required a personal financial literacy course for high school graduation for every student in the Denver public school system. So that district already made the decision that every kid that goes through DPS is getting this class as part of their high school graduation requirements. Another district nearby might not have done that. But what we can do is take a look at the past few years of those students taking the course in Denver Public Schools versus another district that's not doing it, and show that data and bring those testimonials and talk to lawmakers about, hey, look, this district is already doing it. They're paving the way. If there are any hesitations or any opposition in terms of how are we going to fit into the schedule? Okay, well, let's look at how Denver Public Schools fit into the schedule. Or how are we going to figure out staffing? Which teachers are going to teach it? Well, let's go ahead and look at this case study because it's already been figured out. It's like everything is figure outable type of thing. Like, the people who don't want to see this happen, it's not because they don't believe in the power and the importance of it. It's because they can't wrap their mind around the logistics sometimes. And those are adult problems. That's not the students don't have a problem when it comes to this. They really care about it. But sometimes as adults in education, we get so bogged down by the logistics and like, oh, but the master schedule. Oh, but the department, but which department is it? Oh, and it's like, these are like dinosaur systems that have been around forever. They're figure outable. It's not a reason to withhold critical financial education from every single student just because there's a little logistics problem with the master schedule. We can't figure it out. We can't use AI. We can't kind of, get around that. Of course we can. And not only can we, but we should, because every kid deserves that. Our work and our effort to figure out those small things so we can get to the bigger thing, which is cycles and cycles of a generational lack of financial literacy, understanding, and education. So I do think go to the district first. Once your school has an elective, go to the district and say, hey, every school in our district should be required to offer at least an elective in personal finance, at least. And then we can get to the point where the district requires every student to take it, right? And then you can become a lighthouse district or a model district where you can show how you've solved for all of these, variables, that then the state could use your district as a model for new districts to do the same.
Oh man, I love that. That's awesome. The grassroots nature of that, I think, is going to make actually a big difference, because it's not going to be so much like the state just comes in and says, figure it out. It's much more of a like where we want it, and then it's put together in a way that actually makes sense. So that way, when another school gets told, hey, we're going to do this now, that school can be like, well, how am I going to do that? It's like, well, we've already got the data, instead of just saying like,
Yeah.
this is going to work. Good luck, which
Exactly.
so many schools are used to just being told it's going to work.
Right.
Good luck. So I think
Totally.
it's probably better to start with just a school and then a district. So that way we have that, that grassroots foundation for the other schools to feel confident when they get told it's time to implement this. So that's a great idea.
Yeah, I love that. I do think this is a grassroots movement. And I don't know how many people realize that, because over the past few years, we've grown so much from, 8 states to 26. It's like, whoa, states are now top down mandating this. It's like, no. Actually, if you look at the number of schools that had already required financial literacy in those states, it was spreading massively. It's just that there was a whole bunch of inequality. Only districts that had the resources, or only schools that really had a passionate teacher, not every school. And so I really do think your point about how grassroots this effort really is at its core is so important, because the students themselves are demanding that they need this. Like, they recognize that, like, they don't know how a credit card works or how student loans work. They don't know how to buy a car, how to buy a house. How can they graduate and be ready to take on the world, whether they go to college or not, 18, 19 years old, out in the world, without understanding anything about a paycheck or your pay stub or payroll taxes or nothing? I mean, it really doesn't make any sense. So I think now the next generation is starting to get fired up and recognizing that if they don't demand it, if they don't fight for it, it's not going to happen, because it hasn't happened yet. And so it's going to take this generational shift saying, no, we aren't going to quit until we get this. And then the beautiful thing about you're successful with this, and I think about this a lot, this is what fires me up. Like, when I get up in the morning and I look at my calendar, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have like 15 Zoom meetings. I don't even have a block for lunch today. Like, it's wild. Or I have to travel and I'm so tired. Like, what keeps me going is the idea that once this requirement is in place, and every single student who attends high school in that state is guaranteed access to a semester course in financial literacy, their little brothers and sisters, their nieces and nephews, their little cousins, the kids who play at the park down the block, your grandchildren, your great grandchildren, beyond our lifetimes. This is called systemic change. We're not creating change at like an individual level. Like, oh yeah, I taught 100 people how to open a Roth IRA. Woohoo. Like, or I had a 3,000 people attend my retreat, last year, where we learned about money. It's like, great. But once those 3,000 people are gone off the face of this planet, what then, right? The only way you can truly create ripples of change is to make them at the systemic level, because individual people aren't necessarily going to create that like generational cycle in a guaranteed way. You have to guarantee access for every generation to come. So systemic change is really the only way to do that. And that's why I think the work, that I do and that we all do is so powerful.
Yeah, I love what you're talking about with like guaranteeing access to those who really need it, because I have a tenant who's been struggling to pay. He said, I just got a credit card. Can I use my credit card at an ATM to pull money out to pay you? I'm like,
Oof.
no, like I'd
Don't do it. Don't
rather
do
go
it.
not getting paid than make you pull money out on a credit card, and he had just no idea how that even works, right? That knowledge, the basic knowledge of these things that are just surrounding us all the time wasn't there. And I think that's so vital that it gets out there, so that way people aren't getting trapped in these, terrible financial, traps that are everywhere these days if you don't know what to look out for. And financial literacy in the schools is the only way to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, I do have a hard question.
I'll let you go to that next question, but I just want to make the point that it is a core part, a key part. It's a big part, but I don't want to come off as like a delusional, person who believes that it's the only thing, it's the only lever, it's the only way that will move the needle. Like, I want to be real. There's still a lot of racism in the financial industry. There's still a lot of sexism in the financial industry. There's still a lot of issues around ableism, ageism. There's a lot of issues that are baked into the financial system that don't give everyone opportunity and access equally to financial products and services. And so I'm not here to make it sound like I'm under the delusion that financial literacy being required in every school is going to solve, like it's going to be this panacea. It's going to solve all the problems that we have in our country around inequity, around lack of financial, resources and opportunities. It's not going to solve everything like waving a magic wand, but moving forward and trying to progress without without financial literacy education is 100% not going to work. So it's part of a multi-pronged approach, but I definitely don't want to come off as if like I believe that like financial literacy is the magic wand we have to wave, it's going to solve all of our problems. Absolutely not, but it's got to be part of the solution.
Awesome. Yes, absolutely. So I was actually going to go to that similar spot, not necessarily to the inequality, but the question I have is how can we make sure this is implemented with fidelity so it actually works? Because my biggest concern with these mandates is that it'll be assigned to someone who doesn't know about finance, who doesn't really care, who doesn't really want to do it, and it's just going to become something that's going to be a drag on the students who don't want to participate, who don't want to get there. So what are we doing, or what can we do to make sure that we are supporting everyone in a way that the financial literacy will actually be there, be solid, and it will actually make a difference?
100%. I love this question because I think this is so important. When the process is actually happening, where legislation is being proposed and they're having meetings and people are showing up to testify in support of legislation because there's like an active bill moving through the legislature about financial literacy requirements, that's not a time to just like sit idly by and go like, okay, they're handling it. There's a bill that's going to get done. The details of that bill matter. The language of that bill matters a lot. So as somebody who this is going to affect directly, being that you're a teacher in a school, you want to take a look at that bill. All of this is public data. You can literally go to your state's website, and like look up like what is the active piece of legislation right now. It's a lot, can be overwhelming because there's a lot of bills being proposed every session. But NGPF has made it really easy. If you just go to the map on our website, you can actually click on your state and see any active legislation right now. All the bills we have just like a list of all of the different bills and that are around financial literacy. So you can look for your state, look for an active bill around it, open it, click on the PDF document, and read the language. The language will say, for example, one example I can think of was when Wisconsin happened a couple years ago. That was AB 109. Wisconsin said it gives choice to individual school districts to decide what needs to change in order to make room for this graduation requirement. That's powerful because that means each district can do things a little differently as long as every kid gets the semester course, then they've done their job to make sure every student gets this. But then you have some other states that are really, really specific, like in New Hampshire, the standalone personal finance semester course is likely to reduce the elective courses. So they had about 6 elective credits. Now they went down to 5.5 elective credits, and that half credit becomes everyone takes personal finance. You also have states like Georgia where there's a little bit of room for like choice, right? So it's like it can either count as a math credit, it could count as a social studies credit, or it could count as an elective credit. And it just depends on each student deciding like, oh, I'm short on math credit. I'm not gonna be able to graduate if I don't have a math credit. So I'm gonna take my personal finance course this semester and make that count for my math credit so that I have everything I need to graduate. And that's really cool because it reminds me of like my college graduation. I remember when I was like trying to finagle all my credits to make sure I had everything I needed to meet for my major. So it's sort of essentially preparing them to be able to make sure that they're, dotting their I's and crossing their T's to be prepared to graduate with all of the requirements in place. But it gives flexibility and choice to the students and the teachers in the districts. You have some where there's absolutely no choice at all, where it's like, this counts as social studies and that's it. And it's going to be coupled with government, or it's going to be coupled with economics, first semester government, second semester personal finance, or first semester economics, second semester personal finance. And it's super prescriptive that way. When you read the language of the bill being proposed, you can show up, you can write to the bill sponsors who wrote that bill, the authors of the bill. You can email every member of the education committee on the House and Senate side in your state and say to them, because again, all of this information is public record. You can get their email addresses off your state website. You can find out who's on what committee. And so it takes a little bit of time and effort, right, and dedication. But if you find all of the members and you get their emails and you send them a note, you write them a letter saying, this bill language says that only social studies can teach it. I am a family and consumer science teacher, or I'm a career and technical education teacher, or I am a financial algebra teacher. And I can show you data that talks about how powerful it is to have it taught here through the career track or through facts track or through whatever track, right? If you pass this bill as it's written, you will write me out of the bill. My instruction that I'm providing already, and that's such high quality, is not going to happen. And what's going to end up happening is only the teachers in that department who aren't teaching it right now are going to end up being like, oh, we're being voluntold. We're being told we have to do it. And they're not going to be passionate and excited to do it. So I personally believe the more flexibility in the language, the better, because then the schools and the districts will be able to say, oh, yep, we know Sean, he loves financial literacy. He's going to teach this course because he's the best one to do it. And the language of the bill doesn't prescribe us, over prescribe who exactly has to do it. So there's some flexibility and we can choose the best person to do it. Because the reality is, it's not like, like when you're going to teach biology, you have to have taken science classes in college. You have to be certified to teach biology. You have to be science certified, right? But personal finance, like we said before, it's not like social studies. It's not like math. It's its own category, and it's so multidisciplinary that you can teach this class as long as you have a passion and a skill set in finances, which means a business teacher could teach it, a math teacher could teach it, a social studies teacher could teach it, at so many different disciplines and sort of like licensures and certifications can still prepare you to teach it, because it's more so about really like having debates in the classroom and really getting the students to come alive around the topic of like comparing, contrasting two different decisions. Sean did this to buy this thing, Yanely did that. Like, who made the smarter approach? Let's run the numbers and see what happens 10 years down the line, who's able to retire with dignity and who's not because of those financial decisions they made. This is the kind of stuff that happens in that classroom that's not tied to your license or your certificate or your state, requirements. I think it's really about having a teacher who's passionate, who's dedicated, who cares about it. So I would say maximum flexibility is always better. And the only way to check for it is to actually open up the PDF document linked on your government's website and take a look at the bill language of the bill that's either being proposed or that was recently passed.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Okay, so that map is awesome. I love that idea of just having an easy place to find those bills. So if you would like to get the link to that map or to any of the other NGPF resources we were talking about today, you can go to teachyourmoneyshow.com/podcast and find the show notes for all of the episodes there, or you can go into your podcast player and look in the description to get a direct link to the page for this episode. So I recommend you check that map out. That's going to be absolutely amazing. Okay, Yanely, I've got two more questions for you. The same questions I ask all of my guests. The first one is, what is your number one tip for teachers to have a richer wallet, classroom, and life?
I gotta say, I wish I had leveraged automation more when I was in the classroom. I was just manually doing so much. And the thing is, when you are in the habit of doing things a certain way, we're very routine driven. Teachers by nature, we're like, most teachers, I would say, are like very organized and like, we're planners. And because of that, we really get stuck in doing things a certain way. It's worked for me, it's effective, but it might not be efficient. And that is one of the biggest things that I think, stepping outside of the classroom, when I look back at my experience, I'm like, I woulda, coulda, shoulda. I would automate so many different things and put more routines in place that don't require me to be manually part of the routine. And this is true for classroom routines. This is true for, notifications to families. This is true for systems in your classroom. This is true for so many things, right? But especially with your own personal finances. There, of course, your 403B is one example of an automation, right? It's a small percentage of every paycheck that goes towards your retirement. You don't have to do anything. It happens automatically as long as you set that percentage. But that's super powerful, and that can happen in a lot of other ways. Automating savings to different savings accounts for different goals, automating minimum payments towards your credit card so you never have a late payment, because that can really hurt your payment history towards your credit report and your credit score. Automating bill payments so that you don't have to worry about forgetting other bills that need to be paid. Putting notifications and alerts that automatically let you know if your account balance is too low or if some money has entered or exited your account. I mean, just use the technology. I know there's like this fear mongering happening right now with AI and tech, and oh no, are we all gonna lose our jobs? But the reality is, the people who are going to thrive are the people who learn how to use these tools to make their work and life better, and not to replace the what we do every day with our minds and our work. It's to make it more efficient and more effective, not necessarily to kind of remove us from the equation. So I would absolutely sit down, come up with a plan to put together at least 1 to 3 new automations in your financial plan and in your life and work, because man, even if it's just a task that takes you a minute every single day, that compounds. Think about that minute every single day. After a year, we're talking about 365 minutes that you could be using for something else that matters more. So automation is the name of the game for me.
I absolutely love that. I firmly believe that teachers who feel like they don't have enough time, that they have to, spend hours upon hours grading things and like that at home, need to just take a hard look at that, this idea of automation or things you can do to just reduce your workload, because,
Yes.
we're being paid for the time that we're being paid for, which is our contract hours. And when you're going beyond that, you are giving your labor away for free, which is not, wrong. I'm just saying that if you're doing that hours every single day, that is wearing down on you. That's making you burn out. And we don't want you to burn out. We want you to stay in the classroom so you can keep helping these kids. So, automate things, get those things off your plate, reduce the amount of time that it requires for you to do all the other stuff so you can focus on just being a teacher. And then the same thing for your money. All right, reduce the effort it takes to run your money life, so that way you don't get burned out on finance. That way you can just, live your life and let it grow and be great.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, last question for you. If a teacher has a question for you, they want to get in contact with you about the resources at NGPF or about financial literacy advocacy, how can they do that?
Yeah. So you can reach out to us at NGPF. Info@ngpf.org reaches our whole team. My first name, Yanely, at ngpf.org comes directly to me. We have an annual conference every year in April. It's virtual, which you can join for Financial Literacy Awareness Month. And if you are brand new to teaching and you're just like brand new to teaching or brand new to teaching financial literacy, and you want to join and you want to just kind of check out what it's about, that annual conference is a great way to check us out. But also you can take a look at some of the free events that we have on our website every single day. Just go to ngpf.org and go to the teacher PD tab. And we have tons of events, both in person, like via Zoom, not in person, but like live via Zoom every day. And then also kind of what we call like on demand. So you can be in pajamas with a cup of tea in your bed on a Sunday morning, and you just spend an hour learning a little bit about cryptocurrency basics or learning about interest rate changes. Any topic that you kind of like want to just, get a little bit more information about. We have such a wide variety of those 1 hour modules. And again, everything is free. Now, I know personally people who spend thousands of dollars to learn all kinds of things about money online, and you got top-notch quality content for free, designed for teachers, specifically with teachers in mind, by teachers for teachers. And so, yeah, it's just a great plethora of resources. So ngpf.org, if you want to contact me, Yanely at ngpf.org. And then all my social channels, personal social, where I talk about my work, my book, is Miss Be Helpful, MISSBE Helpful.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Yanely, for coming on the show. It's been a ton of fun. I've loved this conversation about how we can get involved with financial literacy, and you've just been a wealth of knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. This was so great.
Thank you, Yanely, so much. That was a fantastic conversation. I cannot wait to get into the Cliff Notes because there are just so many great nuggets in this. But before we do that, the Cliff Notes are brought to you by Yanely. She actually doesn't know I'm doing this, but I wanted to take a moment to promote her book, Mind Your Money, insightful stories and strategies to help you reach your #money goals. You can find a link for that book. Take a look at it. And, Yanely wants to get this book available to teachers in their classrooms. So if you're interested in ways to do that without it coming out of your pocket, you can also reach out to her. And she has lots of resources, lots of opportunities to let teachers get access to this book. Not going to, guarantee you that you'll get it for free, but I know that she's gone out of her way to get people to sponsor this classroom sets for classrooms and so forth. So she just really wants to get the message out there more than anything. So take a look at that book. All right, now on to the Cliff Notes. The number one Cliff Note is it's about teaching the kids that they can do it, to have a growth mindset. That is what personal finance is. It's changing the mindset much more than it is teaching the math, because the math comes by fourth grade. They don't need to know math beyond fourth grade to be able to just master these concepts and do them very, very well. So we need to show them that it's possible. Number two, Use NGPF if you have to teach personal finance because it's free. You don't have to use only NGPF, but if your school is saying, look, we're supposed to do personal finance, or you want to, but we can't pay for it, NGPF is there to provide all the resources you can need. And then you start with that, and then you can go into other things and bring in other ideas or create your own resources. But start there. It's a great place to start. Number 3, personal finance must be a full course. If we don't get it in as its own course, it's just not going to have the same weight and the same power that it needs. So if you're advocating for personal finance courses in your school, please don't just add it into your 3 weeks in whatever class you're teaching, but try and get a full course, because that's going to be what is going to help the students succeed. Number 4 goes along with that. It must be a requirement or it won't happen. If it's only an elective, it's going to be one of those optional things that gets thrown aside unless there's a teacher there with the passion to do it. So making this a requirement is essential to creating a massive nationwide change in finances. Number 5, if you're like, man, I want to get this going. Well, first check your state. Your state might actually already be there, even if there's not a class in your school, because it takes a few years for things to process. But if you don't have it in your state, then you can start with your classroom. Just, get one class going, get, one elective going. And then when you get, enough people interested in enjoying it, start a petition, get parents signed in on there. And then you can go to your principal and make it required. And then you can go to your district. And then when you have your district making it required and it being something that is popular in your district, that district can become a lighthouse district, which is going to pave the way for your state accepting the idea of a personal finance required course. Number 6, take a look at the bill if it's already in place for your personal financial literacy, so you can advocate for flexibility. The flexibility for districts to handle this the best way possible is going to create the best teachers for this and the best results for the kids. So advocate for flexibility before it even gets passed. That way it can just be implemented the easiest way possible. And finally, number 7, I love this: leverage automation in the classroom and your finances. Take your time back with technology. Take your sanity back with technology. So that way you're not feeling like you have the pressure to do everything. I would even go as far as to say that if you feel like your class cannot operate without you, to the point where you just say like, all right, substitute, you have to play a video and do nothing else just because nothing's going to happen without me there. If there is nothing that's going to operate without you there, that is a sign that you need to implement more automation. This is just my personal opinion. You might disagree with me. If you have a disagreement with that, send me an email, Sean, SHAUN, @teachermoneyshow.com. Happy to have a conversation. But there are signs of burnout, of grading long hours after school, or preparing your lesson plans at 2 a.m. for the next day, that are going to say something needs to change. I need to leverage more automation. I need to take more of my time back so I can be the best I can possibly be for my students. And the same thing for finances, having more things automatically happening so that way you are becoming a millionaire without even thinking about it. That is the power of automation. If you have to make the move to save money, to invest money every single month, it's just not going to happen. Those are my cliff notes for this episode. And if you do these things, you're going to help others become rich. But remember, as a teacher, you're already rich. Your wallet just needs to catch up.
Are you worried you won't have enough money to retire? Or maybe you just don't know how you're going to get out of all of this debt. Whatever your situation is, I can help you. Go to teachermoneyshow.com/guest and fill out the form there. And you can come on the show for free coaching, or we can meet one-on-one to discuss your needs. I look forward to talking to you.